evening, respected scholars, distinguished guests, and dear participants joining us from across the globe. I am Pritili Modak. On behalf of Modak Academy, it is my pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to everyone to today's International Baby. Today's session invites us to enter into the profound world of Pravesika, a gateway to understanding the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism and the journey from individual consciousness towards the recognition of the Supreme Self. Today, we are privileged to have with us an accomplished scholar-practitioner, Dr. Swastik Banerjee, whose academic and spiritual journey beautifully brings together Kashmir Shaivism, Tantra, Sanskrit intellectual tradition, and Indian philosophy. Dr. Banerjee completed his Ph.D. in philosophy from the University of Calcutta, with his research focusing on the concept of the self in the Anuttara Trika philosophy of Khemraja. He has been honored with several prestigious fellowships, including the University Research Fellowship of the University of Calcutta, Ishwar Ashram Trust Fellow, and the Kashmir Shaiva Institute Fellowship. He also secured first rank in the MA program in philosophy at the University of Madras. Alongside his academic scholarship, Dr. Banerjee has undertaken traditional initiatory studies, receiving Purna Diksha in Srivedha and Mahashamrajya Sadamnaya Diksha in the Vidya Krama of the Caligula of Bengal. He has presented research papers at national and international conferences, delivered lectures on Indian philosophy and Tantra, and contributed creatively as the scriptwriter for Siddhananda Vilasa, recognition of the divinity within a dance theatre production supported by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. His work represents a meaningful dialogue between traditional wisdom, lived tantric practice, and contemporary philosophical inquiry. We are truly honored to have Dr. Swastik Banerjee with us today. So, on the behalf of Modak Academy and all the participants, I extend our heartfelt welcome to you. We eagerly look forward to learning from your profound knowledge and insights to the Pravesika text. With that, let us begin today's enlightening session. Over to you, Dr. Banerjee.
Thank you, everyone. I would personally thank Modak Academy, Gargidi, Mr. Ganesh Modak and also Priti Modak for that beautiful introduction. I am Swastik Banerjee. My introduction has been already given. We are going to start. This is going to be the first day of the class series of lectures that are going to continue on reading this text, Pravesika. Just to give a background of Pravesika, Pravesika is also the first text I studied when I started with my journey in Kashmir Shaivism Trika philosophy, because it clarifies about most of the basic concepts when I was studying with Professor Shen Sharma, and then later on I studied this text again and again with other teachers. And the placing of this text is also very important. This is composed by Shemoraj, who is the disciple of Abhinavagupta. Now, Shemoraj is one of the he is held to be a bit more controversial, because sometimes the tradition takes him to be one of the main disciples of Abhinavagupta Padacharya, and some of them do not think that he has gone against the lineage and said something different. Regardless of what he says, much of the revival of Trika philosophy that happens later on in the 20th century, that is with Swami Lakshmanju, it happens in the line of Shemoraj's interpretation, and thus that is the tradition which lives on most predominantly. And why this text is because, as the name suggests, it's Para Pravesika. It's the entry or entering into the realm of Para, or the highest. So, before I go into it, let's go a bit into the background of this system, like when did it come back, how it was, because I see a lot of the people over here may be already knowing about it, but for some of you it might be new, and some of you who might be listening to the recording later on, this might be new to you, those people also. So basic thing. So we come to know of this system as Kashmir Shaivism, as Professor J.C. Chakraborty puts it, when he basically, as an archaeologist, was working in Kashmir, and he comes across some manuscripts, and he says that he did not know how to put this over there, and because what he finds is most of the texts dedicated to Shiva and the living, so he titles it as Kashmiri Shaivism, or the system of Kashmir. Now, if I just call it Kashmiri Shaivism, there is going to be another a big problem. And the reason why I don't call it Kashmir Shaivism and I prefer the word trick over here is also very particular. So, the term Kashmir Shaivism, from the etymology itself, it defines that it indicates the system of Shaivism that evolved in Kashmir. Now, in Kashmir, there is a number of systems that actually evolve over there. With Pratyabhijna Trika being one of them, there is a dualist Shaivism that evolves over there, which is quite predominant in the South India right now. We have the Nilakantha and the other forms of Shaivism. We have several other aspects of Shaivism. So I think Arghudipta Kaur and Murugeshan sir are actually discussing this. So not to go into those much of details, but prior to this period of 20th century, when J.C. Chakraborty recovers the manuscripts and the Kashmir text series starts, we do not get much reference of this system from many of the thinkers, with an exception of two thinkers. One is your Shankar Chaitanya Bharati, who is a Pandit, from Kashmiri Pandit, who settles down in Kashi and writes his text Darshan Sarvasyam, and does the comment, there's a chapter on Swatantravada, and in that he critiques Swatantravada and keeps it right before his main doctrine of Vivartavada, and says, gives an elaborate critique. And this is where also Shemaraj becomes important, because this has been a part of my thesis, like what Shankar Chaitanya Bharati does and how do I choose to reply that, and different trika. So then going back, we have Sarvadarshan Samagra of Madhavacharya, and there we find Pratyabhijna philosophy as one of the steps of philosophy, which will ultimately lead to Vedanta as the last highest philosophical system, for because it's the Vedantin writing it. So these are the two systems who have actually properly referred to this system earlier. Other than that, if we go back almost 1,000 years, like this is around 1000 AD up till 1200 AD. So starting a period of, because we have Gargidi over here, who has worked on Utpala Deva and who is also a scholar of this system. So she may not be very like vocal about it. So Gargidi, what time would I say that Kashmir Shaivism basically starts? Around 7th or 8th century.
8th
So
century, end of 8th century.
end of 8th century. So yes, so let's say for 400 years we have this system, for 500 years, which like takes its peak with Abhinavagupta, and then with the fall of Kotarani and coming with the Muslims, disagreement with the broader Vedic religions, this system somehow starts to fade away from the mind of the people. Parts of it remain because there are scholars coming from Kerala, namely, I think his name is also Madhuraj, I think, yes. So who also writes the Dhyana of Abhinavagupta, who comes to meet Abhinavagupta and learns from him, then travels back to Kerala, and then Maheshwarananda and others are there writing about this system, and in one form it lives on in South India. A group of it, like Jayarath and other commentators, Gyanananda and others, who are writing their system in Srividya Parampara, and a part of it survives in Srividya lineages. And then when it comes to Bengal, almost very little survives in Bengal because we don't get much of Kashmir Trika in Bengal. But in Bengal, we get another wave of Tantra that we find in the around 15th century. So, which leads to this new age of Tantra that we are having here in the form of Kalikula and Vidyakrama and other systems. Now, in the 21st century, when we are reading about Kashmir Shaivism, a lot of influences does come from Kashmir Shaivism philosophically in Bengal's Tantra because uh, if we are looking into Bengal's tantric history, one thing is evident that there is not one voice that we hear as the voice of the tantric scholarship. You have people like Vijay Krishna Chattopadhyay, whose voice sounds more like the Brahmo doctrine when I see his Mata Puja Paddhati. We have voices of Mahamopadhyay, Gopidat Kubiraj, and Akhanda Mahajog and other systems of thought which he is proposing. We have Rishi Aurobindo, whose voice, when he is talking about Bharati Bhavani and other doctrines is coming here. We have Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Nigamananda, even Swami Vivekananda deviating a bit from. We have the nationalist voices of Shakta. We have a doctrine that is absolutely similar to Shankho. Now, Shankho becomes the building block of most of these systems, even Buddhism. We have the Vajrayana views and different views. Era-wise, it keeps on changing. And in 21st century, we have our own scholars, and we are trying to prepare a new way of doing philosophy. And Kashmir's Pratyabhijna philosophy becomes most important because that's where we find the most similarities in explaining the rituals. But it's not that this defines it. So this is basically how a big, like we can draw a line of how from the very early 8th century till here it is done. Now what the legends say, because what we get from before is mostly legends, and you can look into the work of Alexis Sanderson and Divakar Acharya, and also a bit of works on Timal Sinha, how he is doing in, Professor Timal Sinha is doing in Vimarsha Foundation. So there we get what is happening. Prior to that is there is a legend that goes on that there was this non-dualist system which was revealed to Rishi Durvasa, and by the name in Srividya tradition we get as Krodha Bhattaraka by Srikanthanatha, and which in due time was lost, or rather disappeared from the common minds, and it was the dualist system and the Guhya Samaja and other Vajrayana system which predominated the Kashmir Valley. So now, as Shemaraj puts it, coming from the line of Abhinavagupta, like Vasugupta, because he was unable to accept Nagabodhi's teachings, he and nor was he satisfied with the dualist Shaiva teachings, he desperately seeks the Rahasya Sampradaya, the mysterious Rahasya over here indicates the mysterious Sampradaya which disappears in time, in which Durvasa follows. Now, different people say different things. Some say a Siddha appeared to him, some say Shiva appeared to him in dreams, and they revealed him the place, the location where Shiva Sutras is inscribed. And that place is still there, Shankarpal. Maybe the next day I will show it. So he goes there, he meditates there, Shiva Sutras become revealed to him, he documents it, he comes back, and again, the tradition has its different opinions. Some say he composes, some says Calcutta composes. So the immediate text that comes up is Pandakarikas. So which is the realization of the Pratyabhijna philosophy that, or rather the Spanda doctrine over there, because this is the first stream of Kashmir Shaivism, the Agama and the Shiva Sutra that is coming over there. So that is the first wave it comes. Then with coming of Somananda and Utpaladeva, Somananda's Shiva Drishti and Utpaladeva's Pratyabhijna Vimarshini and Siddhitrai. So like Professor Rastogi, my teacher, and others hold that it is Utpaladeva who is the founder of Pratyabhijna philosophy, because in his Pratyabhijna Karikas, he is basically using the word that I am going to say Pratyabhijna Upapadayami, that he uses that word, while some hold that it is Somananda who is doing this, because in his Shiva Drishti he is debating this previous systems and bringing it forward. Now, like the disciple of Utpaladeva, that is Utpaladeva becomes the Paramal Guru of Abhinava Gupta. Now, Abhinava Gupta merges in many streams of thought. He is getting initiated in Pashupata systems. He is getting initiated in the Matsendranath's Kaula system. He is getting initiated in the Krama system. He is taking Brahma Vidya and other systems. And eventually, he is finding his refuge in Pratyabhigya under Sambhunath. So, Sambhunath becomes his main guru. And finally, Abhinava Gupta comes upon this. Now, Abhinava Gupta's primarily the main composition which he is writing independently is something that is very hard to find other than two things. One is commentarial texts. So even Tantra Loka, Tantra Bhattadhanika, Paratrishika Vivarana, and Malini Vijayottar Vartika, and the shorter version of Tantra Loka, that is Tantra Sar, are all parts of the Malini Vijayottar Tantra's commentary. And then we have Ishwar Pratyabhigya Vimarshini, Ishwar Pratyabhigya Vivritti Vimarshini, which is doing on the Ishwar Pratyabhigya Karikas of Utpaladeva, amongst which Gita's elaborate bhashya on Bhagavad Gita, the Kashmiri rendition, and that is lost to us now. And then he is making a Gitartha, I don't exactly remember the name now. The shorter version is right now available to us. And then he is doing commentaries on Natya Shastra. He is doing writing on Dhvanya Loka, Lochana Trika, and a lot of literature is lost. So Abhinava Gupta becomes one of the big stalwarts of Indian tradition, who is sadly little mentioned and taken into context when we discuss philosophy in today's time. But luckily, because of this revival, we are now aware of Abhinava Gupta's Jayanti, and a lot of important work is being done. Like from the Natya Shastra lineage, Padma Vibhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam has done a lot to preserve that. And then there is this aesthetics and others. And so this is under him, we have Shemoraja. And what Shemoraja's one of the great purposes of Shemoraja is seen in his Pratyabhigya Hridayam text is he is trying to convey the very difficult texts of Kashmir Shaivism, that was or this Greek philosophy that was present over here, into a more simplified doctrine for the people who may not be intellectually inclined towards going into such complicated debates. Because one of the factors that play an important role in this system is that the debates evolve from one philosophical system to another. So the realist systems, the materialist systems, to the idealism, a system of idealists like Vijnanavadins and others, to ultimately coming into the Trika doctrine, which is rather complex to grasp for a person who has not dedicated their life to studying philosophy and Tarka Shastras. So in Pratyabhigya Hridayam, he makes a promise that I am writing this text and this system for those who out of Shaktipata, that is the grace of the divine, has evolved the bhakti, but has not really evolved got the intellectual side to it. So to clarify the Bodha Jnana, because just an experience may not give you the clarity of Brahma Jnana that is needed, but it also needs a sharpness of the intellect and the concept so that one can really be properly absorbed in that. So he makes it a point over there. And the most important work, it comes down to a beginner, if someone is not reading Pratyabhigya Hridayam, because that's a more polemical text, is Pravesika. Now, Pravesika is one of the shortest literature of Trika we have. And Shemoraja over here basically gives everyone an entry book into the very doctrine of Para, giving the very metaphysical or a doctrinal idea of what the reality is. Why I choose this is I will read through this text, and my concern will be not just to read it, like, because there is no absolute traditional reading of Kashmir Shaivism, because there is no uh, reading tradition like Vedanta and Nyaya that is alive in Kashmir Shaivism, that predominantly, except for Swami Lakshmanju's. But Swami Lakshmanju's tradition also delves into a lot of practice come reading. Okay, so Swami Lakshmanju has done a commentary on Pravesika to explain it, and Makhanlal Kokilu, and that is the disciple of Swami Lakshmanju, has also done a further commentary of Pravesika in their own way. There are very little commentaries of Pravesika available. So Prabhadevi has done a translation of it. In internet, we find some scholars of Mark Deskowski and others, because abroad there is a lot of discussion of Trika happening, who has done some work of translation. So it's available online. Praveshika is available everywhere. But my concern is, because I'm coming from a philosophy background, so my reading will be very different from the reading of a person coming from a Sanskrit traditional background or a historical social South Asian studies background. My reading will be delving into more of the philosophical argumentative part, while giving the idea of the religions part it is. So before we start Praveshika, let me give you a brief idea of what is in the text. The text basically deals, it will be evident in the Mangala Charan, is how the reality reveals itself to the world. And how it reveals itself is through the sequence of 36 tattvas. Okay, I was taking a Shankhya class, and I see some of the students who had studied the Shankhya classes here. There will be lectures of Shankhya in the other lectures. If needed, I will repeat it later on. So Shankhya accepts 25. Here they accept 11 more. So that is one of it. And the next question is, why does it reveal it in that manner? Or what makes the consciousness reveal itself or disclose itself or unfold itself? So this is the major arguments that will be addressed in this basic text. And the idea that Shemaraja gives, because the very name suggests para praveshika, entering into para, or submerging oneself into para. So what the aim of Shemaraja comes over here is, through the study of this very basic text, it's not just becoming an entry book into Trika philosophy, but by just reading into this basic text, one enters into para, that is, one enters into the supreme. So let's go into the cover page first, and then we go into the Mangala Charan. So may I have the first slide? The first slide with Para Praveshika. May I have that? Yes, this one also. So this is the name, Shemaraj Para Praveshika, if you see. And this is basically the cover, and the slide is AI generated. Let's go to the second slide, the important part where we will go into the analysis. So the name Para Praveshika basically indicates wherein the knower, Pramata, because there is a triad of no. This is the methodology of Trika that sort of universally Shemaraja follows. So before I go into why the word trick is used. So it is three with Kana Pratyay, and the three, which basically means three. So Shemaraja, in every of his interpretations, puts this three triad into the triad of the known, like your object of knowledge, that is the known, the process of knowledge, that is the process of knowing, and the knower, that is the subject who is having this process of knowledge. The method, if we put it, the method in which Trika should be read, and this is the biggest problem that, or the way how the critics have critiqued Trika, is the method of reading Trika is not a method of reading the text as an ontological text, even if it may appear to be an ontological text, that is a text that is dealing with the self and just a statement of what the substance is, or its descriptive statement is not that. But it is a phenomenological method of reading, because again we will come it later. So phenomenological way of reading is you are just studying how it is talking about a certain mode of experience. So there is the consciousness of your And the consciousness is the peculiarity of consciousness is it is always intentional, that is, it is always about something. So we are trying to read the text, understanding what this consciousness is about. So para praveshika becomes the pravesha, the entry into para is becomes the consciousness should be made about para. So it's not the transformation, but it's a remembrance of the para of your whole awareness that makes the very uh, flux of becoming, that you are transforming from one moment to another, to identify the para, that is the one string that makes this all consciousness of moments tie together and become one. And that is not different, but one with that. So para praveshika, the name becomes the entry. The name para, the first word, also indicates the para sambit. The sambit is the name for consciousness, but sambit is also the mark of dynamic consciousness. And para sambit indicates that beyond which nothing can be there, because it's the highest consciousness. Wherein the knower, pramatra, pramata, pramana, and prameya is existing. So basically, it is the pramatri. So the composite meaning is basically it is a upaya or a pravesha shastra. It is like upadesha shastra. So the shastra is just not giving you a theory like Nyaya and others, but the purpose of this shastra is to make you realize that non-duality. And where the contracted in the praveshika happens to whom? The praveshika is happening to the contracted individual, that is the embodied consciousness, or the consciousness that identifies itself with a bodily limited self identity into the para, that is the unlimited being. So that which is identified itself as the small is identifying itself as the brihat, the great, and ultimately creating an identity between the small and the brihat to understand that they are not distinct. And therefore, that is your through this non-distinctive and this movement, that is from anubhava to paraparabhava to parabhava. So this journey you are going through to ultimately realize and enter into it. Thus, you are having the praveshika of para. So para praveshika. So let's get into the Mangalacharan of para praveshika right now. The next slide. Yes. So this is the Mangalacharan. I have given this in IAST and also in your Sanskrit, that is the Nagari Lipi, so that you may be able to understand it clearly, because not everyone will be comfortable in Nagari Lipi. But this IAST script, that is the universal translation for Roman, is very important. So I've done that. But I have not provided a translation, and there is a big reason why. And the big reason is, if I provide the translation, the meaning will get restricted into one, and that may not be the entire meaning that I choose to say, because there will be other meanings that will come up with the reading. And then if someone is taking notes or wish to take notes, they can again come back to this. It's important that you, because we won't be going in a hurry into a long text, we will be going part by part. So this is the only part we will be addressing today, that is the Mangalacharan. And Mangalacharan is something that will be repeated every day. So let's first do the Mangalacharan. Now first, what is the purpose of doing a Mangalacharan? The purpose of doing the Mangalacharan, again it's a traditional answer, is not just to fix Anubandha Chatushtay, that is to decide who is the Adhikari, the Prayojana, the Vishaya, and the Sambandha. Okay, now who is the Adhikari? Now Adhikari and Prayojana sort of become similar in this system. So if you are in the arts to realize and enter into para, the name itself, the title itself makes it very clear that if your idea is, if your thing is para pravesha, because one of the peculiar things of Kashmiri Trika is, one of the peculiar thing of Kashmiri Trika is it's not restricting you to have para praveshika because you are born in a different religion or a different doctrine. Everyone by nature is Shiva experiencing themselves as that form. So basically, if you are Shiva who is trying to recognize himself and you have become aware of that, you become an adhikari. So adhikari is sort of universal over here, only you have to have the intention. The prayojana is naturally to have entered into that. Vishaya is the Shastra of Para, and Vishaya will become clear with the Mangalacharan, and the Sambandha is the Sambandha of Jnana, that is how the relation happens over here in how it leads you to the Pravesika. That we will go there. It will be a Sambandha of equanimous relation. So let's go into that. And the other purpose of doing a Mangalacharan, normally it is, in many texts, it is to just have an invocation, just to prove that, just to say that there will be a nirvigna of completing the text. But when Shemoraja does a Mangalacharan, or when a tantric text like Trika system does a Mangalacharan, it is very peculiar. This tantric state text like this, like I'm not talking about the tantric text like our Bengal Swiss and where it's just an invocation to Shiva, but here Mangalacharan also gives an idea of what is happening in the text and what is going to be discussed in the text. So this Mangalacharan becomes the first premise, the concluding statement, and the entire argument of the text. So thus it is not just a mere invocation or a Mangalacharan, it is also the structure through which we know the text. So suppose the very first sutra of Shiva Sutras, which is the key to the entire Shiva Sutra that exists, is Chaitanya Mahatma. So Chaitanya Mahatma itself defines that what is it going to do. The Atman is going to be made to realize with the Chaitanya. Or Chaitanya is non-distinct for Atma, or Chaitanya blank Atma. They will create a relation between Chaitanya and Atma, and that is how we are going to have the discussion. So as we unfold in the Shiva Sutras, we see that Chaitanya Atma is simply an unfoldment to make you realize this, and thus gets established in the very last sutra, Bhuya Syat Pratimilanam. So thus it becomes reunite. So in the reversal order, we basically read and realize that this is the Chaitanya Mahatma that is going to be realized by us. Similarly, this Para Pravesika text by Shemoraja, the Mangalacharan gives us the idea of what they are going to realize, how it is going to be realized, and what is the somewhat the method of this realization. So I would like everyone to read this carefully. So I am doing the chanting. Vishwatmikam tad uttirnam hridayam parameshituhu paradi shakti rupena spurantim samvidam numaha. So this is the Mangalacharan. First doing a literal rough translation. So Vishwatmikam, that which is like, putting it very simply, that which is Vishwatmika or immanent, Taduttirna, that is which is transcendent, that is beyond this, Hridayam Parameshituhu. So it is in the relation of Hridaya, of the Paramesh, the Ishitu, the greatest worship. It's not calling Shiva, it's calling Parameshitu, Parama Isha. So it's that the Supreme Being's Hridaya, that which is the heart of Supreme Being's Hridaya, Paradi Shakti Rupena, which reveals itself as Para Adi Shakti, beyond Paradi Shakti, Spurantim, manifests that it is outbursting itself or being dynamically revealing itself. That Samvid, this is the core word, Samvidam Numaha. That Samvid we bow down to. Now, let's go into the breakdown of this word. So the breakdown comes is how the Mangalacharana is being done. We salute or enter into the Supreme Consciousness Samvit. Numaha is the word of Namaskar. We salute or enter into that Supreme Consciousness Samvit, which is the very heart of the Supreme Being. I'm using the word being instead of Lord or God or anything, because the term will be over here better used as being or self with a capital B. A heart of the very Supreme Lord, which is simultaneously immanent in the universe, Vishwatmikam, this cosmic thing, it is immanent and translated to it. Flashing forth, Spurantim, flashing forth the triadic powers of Para, Para and Apada. This is a very basic translation. As I go through, it's going to get more complicated. So the idea of reading a text, this is also very important, is when I read it in South India, it's very different from how I read it in Bengal. If I directly go into that complicated parts, the only thing it is going to do is scare the people away. Maybe it will do a bit of show off of how much I know, but it's not ultimately going to let anyone learn anything. So it's best to go from very simple steps, but not to take that as the concluding step, and then gradually get into the more complicated versions of that Mangalacharan. So that is what I am doing. So basically, I'm telling you the methodology of how I'm teaching you. So the first word, Vishwa Atmikam. So it is coming from it's basically the feminine word that is taken, that is from Atmika. So it is the Vishwa Atmika. It is like what the samasa done over here is a Bahubrihi samasa. It is a compound samasa where it is broken down as well. As I've taken notes, so I'm looking into that. Vishwa Atma Yasya Satam. So Vishwam Atma Yasyaha Sa Tam. So whose Atma is the Vishwa, whose self is verily the embodiment of the Vishwa. So now what this statement is doing is it is establishing that the reality that we are talking about, the very being that we are talking about, is not beyond this world only. This world is actually a part of that reality, and it is identical with that reality. To call Vishwa as the Atmikam, the character to identify with it is to ascertain that the world is also not mithya. It is just the nature of the world is abhasa for them, satya abhasa as they put it. So it is going to be discussed later on how the nature will be done. So this is the first one. So it is immanent in this Vishwatma. Tad Uttirnam. Now, what if we say mistake that this, it's also giving the nature of this consciousness. So Tad Uttirnam, it is, Tad is discussing about this Vishwa. So it is this Atmika, Tad Atma Vishwa Uttirnam. This is how we have to take it. So Tasmat Uttirna Vishwat. This is how it is taken. Tam. So Tasmat Uttirna Vishwatam. So that self is not just Vishwatmika, it is also transcendent to Vishwa. So that which is not just limited to this conscious experience, it is transcendent to Vishwa. And here also comes a very Kantian idea of experience. I will just do a bit of it now and then I will discuss this elaborately later. So the Kantian idea of experiences, they have this codation of phenomena and noumena. So this Vishwatmika also indicates the Vishwa of our phenomenal experience, and noumena is that which is beyond that. But the problem of the way the Kant and other thinkers in the West would see it, and when we are reading it in 21st century, we have to address this West thinkers, because now philosophy is only not just doing philosophy in India. It is the philosophy that is of this whole world. So we are placing, what I am trying to do is place Trika in that bigger spectrum. So it's not just the phenomena, but that Uttirna is also a part of this consciousness. So it is not distinct from this consciousness, it is a part of this consciousness. Atma is in the consciousness itself, as this school starts reading it. So this self and the consciousness relation, if anything is Uttirna, if it is unknown to the us or unknown in our phenomenal experience, that thing has to be established in consciousness. Otherwise, there will be the contradiction of talking of something that will be eternally unknown, but if it is not a subject, it cannot exist in the first place. This is how Trika puts it, the system puts it. So this immanence and transcendence part is established through this. The other way, as Pran Guruji has mentioned to me, is what is Vishwatmika and what is the Taduttirna Bhava. So this is where the Hridaya Sabda comes into play. Hridaya Parameshituhu. So Taduttirna does not mean that looking outside. It also indicates looking inside or diving inside. So the transcendent realm is not exactly that which is outside, because Vishwa is what is appears as Bahya, but it is not Bahya. So the Bahyartha, that something beyond the external is existing, the very notion of external is going to be rejected with the Taduttirnama. One. The other thing that it is like rejecting and putting us through is Taduttirnam Hridayam. So from that Taduttirna, you are bringing it back to the center of the awareness, the Hridaya. There is something known as the Dahara Vidya, the very void of awareness in the heart on which one meditates. Okay, and where you basically meditate to reach the divine. And then there is the Hridaya of Trika, which is the center of the awareness, where the consciousness becomes dynamic and plays, and it is the heart of artistic creation. Here, the Hridaya is an indicative of all this, including the Dahara Vidya idea I'm talking about, but these people have a very different way of putting it, but ultimately centered. So you are diving into the center of this awareness. So Tat Uttirnam Hridayam. So once you dive in, you basically reach to the Hridayam Parameshituhu. So you reach that Parameshituhu, you have to reach into that Hridaya of that awareness. So Hridayam Parameshituhu. So this is how they say that one thing is established. And Parameshituhu. So Hridaya is also indicating of the Agam. So Re is from the, it is coming from the root Re, that is absorption, and that is I with the Gam Pratyay, that is movement, and it is the Visranti Sthana of Spanda, so the divine heart. So because it is talking about the Re, resting or absorption, and the idea is, what is the purpose of Agama in Kashmir, in Trika? So Agama, if we say that it is the Punargamana, that is the coming of Agamya, the coming back, it is the consciousness talking with itself to make one realize itself. And thus this voices of Trika that follows over here, thus this Para Pravesika, it's the way of Pravesika that is going to make you come into it. So Hridayam becomes the point of your absorption. So Taduttirnam Hridayam, we are again taking these two together, and then we are taking into Hridayam Parameshituhu. So Parameshituhu is coming from the ish, that is the like agentic suffix, and Parameshitri in the sixth case, and the Sambandha is taken, and the absolute agent. So the agency ish with coming with the on the coin like using the word ishituhu is a very conscious choice of doing it. Like instead of using Parama Shiva or something like that, or Parashakti or some other word, like if there's an expert of Chandas, they can tell me how using another word could have been a choice. And so using the dhatu ish, it basically indicates that the Parama being ish is agentive and active, and it is not inactive. Again, the statement that it will come later on, and an elaborate debate will go in the later classes. This is like a very conscious choice to make it distinct from the Vedantin and the other systems. I was thinking of comparing it with Bradley's way of creating the relation, but I am not going into that to unnecessarily complicate in the first day. So, like the Sambandha of Isha is what is put over here, that again in Isha Avashyamidham Sarvam Yatkincha Jagat. So this Ish being the moving aware consciousness and the agentive consciousness which consciously reveals itself to experience itself is taken up. So the question of agency is being put implicit in this word of Parame Ishituhu. Now this Parame Ishituhu, when read in context of Vishwatmika, becomes indicative of the individual agent which is working in the so Vishwatmikam Parame Ishituhu, if we are reading it like that, it would become the agency that is working in the Vishwa Atma as Vishwatmika, and the individual agent functioning within this world, how that is Vishwa Atma, that is the expression of the Parameshituhu, that is the immanence establishes the agency with the individual expressed agent, and taduttirnam parameshituhu is that which is vishwattirna, that is beyond becoming the unknown, unfaced, maybe beyond this universe, the multiverse, or anything you see it as, or that which is being unmanifest, or that is not revealed, the transcendent agent that is functioning, breaking it apart. And the hridayam parameshituhu is also the agent that is working as the antaratma. So creating a triad of the antara, the vishwa, and the hridaya, the seat of absorption, and putting it into the ishit paramesha. So conjoining this through. So this basically, the usage of this term taduttirnam is also useful for us when we are discussing about the idea of, and the parameshituhu, these two words, is when we take up thinkers in the West, because of confusion and the argument that often comes up, is that the doctrine of Pratyabhijna is essentially solipsistic. It is talking about my consciousness and the expanded form of my consciousness. And this is where this thing cuts it through and establishes that Vishwatmikam Taduttirnam Hridayam Parameshitu, the usage of the Parameshitu and Taduttirna Sabda can cut through the idea of solipsism, that when we talk of a Berkeleyan idealism, it is about me and the ideas, but how Berkeley puts it is like my ideas and existing, and then there is this God who is there to wish to see that, because their argument is essayist perceive, to see is to be perceived. So what happens when I am not perceiving it? It's God who is omniscient and perceiving it. But then we have the extreme idealists of Germany who go into the extent that only me and my ideas exist. So in both the cases, how Berkeley says it is Vishwa, it is a form where Vishwatmika is, or the idea of Atmika being common ground is not taken. It is the note of perception as an action is taken. So the existence confirmation becomes based on the perception. So the problem follows over here as the individual self separate from the greater self, because that is what the Christian doctrine, and that naturally leads to the why will I accept anything other than that, and I will only accept the individual self. And because we are going to discuss about ahamta later on, it is very important that we become very clear. It is not this aham that they are talking about. The indication of the Parameshitu who gives that the primary agent is Shiva himself, who is acting out as Vishwatmika. Now here Vishwatmika becomes the limited agent. That is, for me it is Swastik, for there it is Gargidi, Ganesh Modakji and everyone. But it is essentially Parama Ishittu who is functioning as the agent, as Vishwatmika. And for me it is Swastik, but for me the other mind, which is not experienced by man, is Uttirna. So how that other mind becomes that same agent functioning through that is Taduttirnam. And it is the Hridaya where that other mind and my mind, that is the self and the other, has this Vishranti to become one with one agency. So a very dialogue of the mind, self, other, agency, the ground of experience is being put forward in this first line of the Mangala Charan, which should not be read very simply. The next thing that it comes, if we take into a doctrine of Hegelian idealism, that is the one who is also the teacher of Marx, and Marx critiques Hegel to come into it, and the next of Kant. So Hegelian's idealism is always how the spirit through a like a process of dialectics comes into transformation to experience itself. So it's a creation of the thesis and the antithesis to ultimately collapse and create into the synthesis, the interaction. So how does Hegelian dialectics and becomes different from, because it might be confused, like Vishwatmika is the thesis and Taduttirnam is the synthesis, and Hridayam can be the, Vishwatmikam as the thesis, Taduttirnam as the synthesis, antithesis, and Hridayam being the synthesis. What if someone thinks like that? But that is not the case that is happening here, because they are not exactly opposite. It is connected by this one term, that is Parameshituhu, and it is not existing in the contradiction or in the contrary to each other. It is not a step where one the very being disassociates itself, but it is the one very being experiences its purnyata, the completeness of the plenitude in its own being. So Taduttirnata is basically the point of Parameshituhu only as it is Vishwatmika. So it is only a way of expressing, not that what is happening as like it happens. So later on I might get into more details. Now it comes into the part where the solipsism gets absolutely rejected. Paradi Shakti Rupena Spuratim Samvidam Numaha. So the idealistic schools would basically focus on the ground that because okay, first let me tell you what is para, para, apada. So before I get into that, so Paradi Shakti Rupena literally means para Adi Shakti Rupena, that which is other para and etc. Adis etc. Just starting with it, it's on and on. So it does not just the common way of reading it is Paradi Shakti Rupena is just para, apara, and parapara Shakti, the three Shaktis. But one should also consider into the fact that it is not just the three Shaktis that Trika is discussing. It is also the Shaktis of your Dikchari, Bhuchari, Gochari, and several other forms of Shakti which basically comes into discussion in the doctrine. So Paradi Shakti, by the use of starting with Para, the highest, it's all forms of Shakti that comes on. And in the all the names of Shakti Rupena. So Para Adi, using the names of Para Adi, like etc. as in the forms of names, and the form not just in nomenclature, but also this. So if we talk about the nuclear power or the force, or if we come into discussion of the Higgs boson particle and the forces of what creates gravity and others, so it will all become included into the Adi Rupena Shakti, but maybe not what Shemaraja is saying, but it is also the Shakti that he is also saying, because those are Vishwatmika Shaktis. So now here you have to read again from that ground. Paradi Shakti, Vishwatmikam and Paradi Shakti Rupena. So the Paradi Shakti Rupena, which is playing in this universal, that is this cosmic existence or this universe or this particular reality, Taduttirnam, the Paradi Shakti Rupinas, which are becoming predominantly real in the other forms of reality. But it is why use the word Para and not the Adi, Ananta Shakti Rupena. That is one of the things, because if it may be this cosmos, it may be the cosmos beyond, it may be my form of knowledge, it may be the form of others' knowledge. Essentially, it is Para. So the use of Para is to establish that whatever is being played over here is ultimately Para Shakti. It is the very substratum of Vishwanti. So connecting again with Hridayam, Parameshitu and Para, so it is the ground of Vishwanti, which is the Para. So that Para is the one who is like becoming the Ananta and the Adi Shakti Rupena. So Para and the Adi Shakti, the primordial force. Now, if we read it as Para and Adi Shakti Rupena, so it becomes that Para is the substratum ground and Adi Shakti becomes the primary Shakti, that is of Vishwatmika, like talking about this reality and the beyond. Starting with where Para becomes, again, if we read Para as the first Shakti and amongst the sequence of Shakti, it starts becoming Para the Shakti, and this is where the interesting part comes. As I was saying in the beginning, Para is the Shakti that which is the subjective knower, and the subject of experiencer goes up, into the process of experience, which is the Para Shakti, giving the movement, and then Apara Shakti, that is the Prameya. So that is Prameya Chaitanya, that is the object of your knowledge. So in that Adi, it brings in the sequence. So we find that Paradi Shakti Rupena itself is also not one meaning. We can put in a different meaning. Now, how does this negate your solipsism? So, as I said, solipsism is only me and my ideas existing, but it is not the Puran of the Paradi Shakti. So, it is not the play of powers which makes it, it is my ideas that and the process of perception that is doing. Let me just go there once because I have been, I will just go into that because it has already been explained with Parameshituru. Um, like Paradi Shakti Rupena will also be functioning when we reject certain other theories. I just myself got confused. Remember, it's sorry about that, so I will get into that later. So let's go into the next word, Spurantim. So Spurantim is coming from the root, like it is the Shotri Pratyay of Spur. So it is using that present participle of spur. Instead of using pratyay, I'm using present participle for better understanding of you. So making it spur, it becomes spuranti. So basically, it qualifies something. The next word, and it also qualifies. It becomes a characteristic function of Parameshitu. That is your divine, the very for being which unveils itself within itself, not separating it, but within itself, not cutting it, but within itself. Again, so Spurantim is the root in which the reflexive awareness is establishing, and Samvidam is the like what would you say? It's a dynamic. Spurantim will be become Ishwar Nama of the like Bispar or Spuron Hawa. It's a Bengal. I am, let's say, it's a joyous vibration. It's a joyous pulsation that we feel, like when an artist like it's the pulsation that makes you jump in joy. So it's constantly jumping in joy and trying to do it. Now this is basically indicative of the spanda aspect that comes into it because it's an inward pulsation. So spanda spurantim of that, and it also cuts through. Now again, there is a subtle knot to Advaita Vedanta and the argument that we find in Shankar Chaitanya Bharat because they're saying that this consciousness is not Jaya. So Spurantim Samvidam Numaha. Samvidam is a very interesting choice of word because the word with basically means it's Samyak Rupena Vid. So or Samyak Vedati, like that. So Vid Dhatu means to what will I say? To know something, to be something. The dhatu is coming from the root of vid with a quip pratyay, and the idea is samvid or parasamvid using the word indicates that the consciousness will be self-conscious. So a samvid is that knows itself in samyak form, and with is the act of knowing, so samyak vedati. So consciousness is self-luminous of the nature that one, it is not needing another thing to enlighten it, and it cuts it away from the Nyaya and the other schools and the thinkers who says that whether consciousness needs another way to know, like if you are going inward, do I need another mode of knowledge to know it? No, we don't. And the second is how this Samvit reveals itself, the nature of the revelation of Samvit. It says that Samvit basically is knowing itself because of its reflexivity. Consciousness is that which is conscious because it is reflectively in every form of knowledge, as it is reflecting the object, say this bag, as it is reflecting this bag, it is also revealing itself as that object. For a yogi who has fixed and realized this mind knows that through this entire screen you are sitting in front, it is not the object that it reveals, it is also the experience of the object that is revealed, and along with that experience, the experience is not different from consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the one experiencing itself as consciousness. Thus, consciousness is continuously revealing and unfolding itself, and therefore the name of the consciousness we choose is Samvid. And to that do we have Numaha. To that do we bow down. And instead of bow down, the idea is to Nauti Numas, it is not just a salutation, it is the realization that this entire sequence that we have been discussing is not separate. Therefore, there is no one exactly to bow down except to realize and enter into that. So, the very Pravesika Mangala Charana, when we read it, basically gives us an idea of what the very like doctrine of this is happening. So, a bit of more that I will be talking about over here, if I have the time. So, one of the things that they will be doing is in the letter text is how they argue. So, the reason of using the act of salutation coming from the root nu or to praise is also taken here is epistemically re-engineered in a non-dual system. So, because the praising and the salutation, the act of praising when consciousness is praising itself is basically consciousness singing its own glory, that I am revealing my own self. So there is no basically bowing down or worshipping of the consciousness, but it is realizing that it is that. So it is very different from a distant duty. So it is an act of samavesha, and so the self anu, the samvit knower, becomes the self-luminous experience of swatma samvit pravesha. So it is becoming like that. Now, what is it doing? It is Prakash Vimarsha is coming later. Now, Akritam Vimarsha. So, the idea is it is very different from dualism, static monism, and they're going to propose something that is dynamic non-duality. Let me see if I have anything else to say today. Okay, so as I was saying that there are few Western scholars which gets resolved in this like idea. I don't think I have much to say. Okay, those things I will get into in the later chapters. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide, the final slide. The other slide, the chart that I made. So the immediate next class that will follow will discuss about this Parameshwara Paramasambhit. So this is where we will start from the next day. So it is Prakasha Vimarshamaya is the very different definition they give, because how do you explain this Sambhit is the next question that follows. I have understand that this is the reality, but how do you convey this reality to others? So they have the model of a Prakriya Dasha that we say. They call that consciousness is Prakasha Vimarshamaya. So Prakasha is the Shiva and Vimarshamaya is Shakti. So the samarasya of this, that is understanding how the ontological primitive as this, the language use works, is to understand that through use of language we are breaking it into two, and that linguistic usage is only to make you understand the union of them, and through that thus one becomes into an exhaustive immanence, that is all the forms of Vishwatmika that forms, and a non-deductive transcendence, that is the transcendence that is not external to us, or that will be not reduced to a realistic external doctrine, nor it will be reduced to idealism. So that's it.